Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba, progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, back in conjunction with Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African-centered news and information. We're back to have a great conversation with you all this morning. The question is, should Black people support the Latinx community in the 2025 LA riots? As you know, the link is in the description. The link also will be in the chat momentarily. If we can have this conversation, the reason why I decided to do a show on this topic is because I saw that there were a number of individuals, particularly on social media, advocating for the Black community to stand in solidarity, to support, to participate in the protests that were taking place, of course, in Los Angeles. And as we know, we've seen they've actually sprung up throughout the country, places like Chicago, New York City as well, major metropolitan areas. But before we get started, family, make sure you hit the subscribe and the like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you hit the notification bell as well. Also, make sure that you're a blessing to the show. You can, of course, Cash App us at $Lumumba Speaks. Of course, PayPal. You can hit the Super Chat, and of course on Venmo, so that we could continue to give you, independent Black media from an African-centered frame of reference. We know oftentimes when they're in the community, we have a number of individuals who engage in activism, but they tend to do so from maybe a multicultural frame of reference, from a liberal frame of reference, from a Democratic Republican frame of reference, or from an oppressed minority frame of reference. But here we focus, of course, on Pan-Africanism. We believe in the Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion. And in doing so, we want to operate from an African-centered frame of reference. So once again, we kind of get a context, and then, of course, we will open things up, allow people to be part of the conversation. So when we talk about context, I think it's important that we understand that historically, and this was something that was even being promoted on social media. Many argue that, of course, this is an example of white supremacy when we talk about the immigration laws of white hegemony. There's an argument that the same individuals who, of course, are running the federal government, ICE, so on and so forth, run the prison system that's ensnared numerous Black men and women, and of course, what we now know and call the carceral state. So that is an issue of concern. We tend to find also many people even providing some history, some historical context to, of course, Black and brown solidarity. Typically, and I will get to the comments in a moment, family, particularly regarding this concept and idea. When you look at the Black Panther Party, of course, the Young Lords, many people may be unaware of the Young Lords, which was a Chicago-based organization that, of course, was a Chicago-based Puerto Rican organization that, of course, was founded based on their affinity for the Black Panther Party. They worked in solidarity on a couple of initiatives, particularly regarding policing in Black and brown communities. That was a space where they were able to coalesce and engage in what is known as operational unity, which I think is understandable. I think, Dr. John Henry Clark, the great ancestor, master teacher, of course, a mentor of Malcolm X, would teach us that we have no permanent friends or permanent enemies, only permanent interests. And so I think that's applicable when we talk about operational unity. One of the greatest examples, Brother Dwayne Omowale always provides, we know Brother Dwayne Omowale is, of course, the resident historian here at Lumumba Speaks and Bequaline Network. He talks about the importance of studying history, right, and the concept of operational unity. And he would discuss how the United States, of course, aligned themselves and allied with the Soviet Union, right? But then after the World War II, they went back to, of course, being enemies, for lack of a better word. So just something to consider there when we talk about this concept and idea of, operational unity. But once again, I'm seeing here in the comments, Reggie Thomas says, absolutely not. Next question. Very good. Unfortunately not. However, I feel for the small amount of Latinx people that really love their Blackness, right? Understood. Nope. Next question. Lead guitarist. Maryland is a no for me from the UK. I understood. So yeah, so I think this is probably a rather popular sentiment, right? Many people argue this is an example of divide and conquer. I tend to take a different perspective, although more nuanced. I think when we look at the history of relations between the Black and Brown community. We do know that there's a long and virulent history of anti-Blackness in the Latinx community. Some of this is cultural, some of it is historical, some of it is contemporary, right? I did a show a couple years ago on Nuri Martinez, who was the Los Angeles City Councilwoman. I think she was the president of the City Council, and she was recorded on video, on tape, I'm sorry, making numerous negative racialized claims about Black children. I think she had a co-worker, a fellow councilman who adopted a Black child, and she was using Spanish slurs for Black children. I even called the young man a monkey. So we see that there's a long history. I recall even on CNN several years ago, and I'm dating myself, where there was a special run on CNN, and we know, of course, all news has a bias. They have a slant, where they were showing how the Latino community viewed the Black community in a very negative light, an extremely negative light. So I think this is something to consider when we talk about supporting the community that, by and large, you can argue does not support us, right? Does not support the Black community, but does not see us as, even, for lack of better words, human beings, right? So something to consider when we're having this conversation, having this discussion, but definitely want to open things up. So I would argue that if there was support, it would need to be from an operational unity standpoint, and we would have to look at organizationally, from a community-wide frame of reference, how do we benefit? What are we going to derive from this, right? And so I think that is something coming up. Okay, it says the chat page on my YouTube is not coming up. Okay, something I will look at. So you said you have a unique take on this, so definitely would want to hear from you so you can tap in and be part of the conversation. So family, once again, if you're watching, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Hit the notification bell as well. You're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, in conjunction, of course, with Beacon Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African-centered news and information. And if you can, make sure that you are a blessing to the show by, of course, hitting the super chat, and of course, making sure that you support the show via Venmo and, of course, Cash App. So with that being said, family, I'm going to put the link in the chat, and you all can tap in and be part of the conversation. And I will see what's going on in terms of not being able to actually hit the chat on my channel. So once again, family, the link is in the description, link is in the chat. Tap in and be part of the convo. Here, when the question is, should Black people support the Latinx community in the 2025 LA ICE protests? So want to hear from you all. Love to hear what you have to say. Tap in, be part of the conversation now. Be here, be square. So let's see here. It says it's a civil rights issue. It's racial profiling. Okay, very good. So tap in, be part of the convo. We'd love for you to, of course, speak to this a little bit more. Civil rights issue. Is this an issue that Black people should be, of course, addressing? I guess it's the pertinent question. Any Black person rolling under the banner of FBA need to be out in those streets with ICE to get the illegal immigrants out. So I think that's okay. So that's something we can unpack as well. So yeah, so let's have this conversation. And I would presume that you're taking this position because you're arguing we're competing for jobs, right? I would presume that it's the position that you're taking. But I'd love to hear from you once again, family. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Let us know your thoughts. What do you think about this particular issue? And we get the conversation started. We would get the conversation started. But I'm interested in hearing, of course, some of the feedbacks. Let's see here. It says FBA. If FBA follow their logic, right? So I see if FBA follows their logic to conclusion, they have no choice but to get out there, as they have burned bridges with the Caribbean and Africa. And if they lose America, they literally have no land to stand on. So yeah, you definitely need to tap in and kind of be part of this conversation so we really unpack what you're saying, because I would argue we don't have America to begin with. So yeah, I definitely want to hear your thoughts here. So I definitely want to hear your thoughts here. Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It says chat disabled for this live stream. Don't know why that is the case. So I'm going to go in and take a look and find out what's going on here. But yeah, tap in, family, be part of the convo. Love to hear from you all regarding. Oh, I see why. This conversation and hope that we can square things away and get a thorough understanding of why we if we should or we should not be part of the be part of the protest, right? And I apologize if I put riots. It's not a riot. It is a protest. Okay, yeah. So the chat is now up on my channel, so you can tap in and be part of the conversation there. But once again, it's not a riot. It is a protest. I think we just want to make sure that we're clear on the type of language that we're using. I do apologize if I offended anyone regarding, of course, the title. But once again, the conversation is, should Black people, or the question, rather say, should Black people support the Latinx community? So Hood Haitian 305, Zopound, what's the word? How are you doing, brother? Hood Haitian, you could tap in. Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you just fine. You got a lot of background noise, but I can hear you just fine. Okay, so Mr. Sandman, what's the word?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm
Yeah,
doing
you
quite
might
right.
get. Great.
Happy
Yeah, you might get a
Pan-African
look.
Wednesday to you, brother.
Oh yeah, happy Pan African Wednesday. I gotta remember to keep saying that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm out here getting my vehicle service at the dealership.
Okay.
Yeah, might hear a couple cars. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, but they got me sitting here waiting on this recall. But yeah, as for the issue, yeah, it's just. I mean, isn't this what our isn't this what our civil rights activists in the '60s were fighting for? You know, it's called racial profiling, isn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, of course, we do know. So there's a couple of things when we talk about Trump's immigration policy. So, and I had this conversation yesterday with a couple of students. So let's kind of contextualize this. We know that the right's immigration views are rooted in part due to their anathema for the coloring of America, right? The data shows that by 2050, America will be a predominantly minority majority country. The second issue is there's a belief in with this concept and idea of replacement theory, right? Great replacement theory. There are a number of white people in positions, high levels of government globally that actually are advocates and believe that, of course, the left and, of course, Democrats are seeking to replace white Christians in America. This is an actual belief that they have. And so this plays a role in, of course, the immigration policy. The other issue is individuals have come to the country illegally, right? And as a result of coming to the country illegally, that is a crime. One of the things I shared with students, they said, well, but they're separating parents from children. I said, well, if you are accused of a crime and arrested, that's what happens. That's just par for the course. It doesn't matter if it's jaywalking, domestic violence, or, you know, possession of drug paraphernalia. You're separated from your children and your family when you are arrested. So that's par for the course in any type of criminal proceeding. The second issue was, and I asked the students, I said, well, which presidential administration set the record for most deportations? And of course, it was both Obama administration. So the question I have is, where was this rancor, where was this animus for deportation when Obama was president?
Well, it wasn't a big issue, mainly because he didn't make it a huge issue, a part of his political agenda. I think
Okay.
because Trump is using it as a tool for political strength to appease his constituency, his
Yes.
voter base, that it's getting used as something negative. or this is what I believe, but civil rights activists are saying is like in other words, you could there was a different way you could have like deported illegal immigrants other than broadcasting it to the whole entire world. That's what you were doing, and you were like using civil rights issues. You were violating the law. So I assume that the migrants that came to the United States, they know the law, or someone told them about the
Right,
law.
and there's a lack of due process. That is an issue where there's a lack of due process, and irrespective if the person, of course, has come to the country legally, illegally, if they are accused of being a member of a violent gang or not, they have a right to due process based on the laws of America. So I think that's a great point, Mr. Sandman.
Yeah, it's based on the laws of due process, and if you're going to violate the Constitution, then you don't really have a country anymore because the whole country is based on the laws of the Constitution. It's almost like the Ten Commandments in the Christian Bible. Or, but but I do think Christianity is under attack, so to speak. Not because of the migrants, though. I think a lot of those migrants are Catholics.
Right, yeah,
But
right. So those migrants actually believe in Jesus, accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. But yeah,
but I do think like because of a lot of the way the social media is going with all these this new inventions that's coming out and people finding out new things about the universe, and a lot of scientists are pushing that they're agnostic or they don't believe in God, that the culture of Christianity is getting left outside, is getting I don't know if it's getting attacked. Maybe a better word is getting ignored. Um, you can go across a whole bunch of churches all across the country, and not the mega churches, but a lot of the smaller churches all throughout the country. And I don't see as many people like spending their Sundays in church like they used to when I was a younger kid.
right.
So yeah, I think the churches aren't getting as much a huge congregation like they used to, and so I believe that is somewhat changing the culture of the United States. And then you also got the Asians who typically aren't Christian or follow any of the Abrahamic religions, and then the Indians are also moving to the United States, and both of those demographics has a lot of influence in the country. So I mean, I think they're right. Christianity is losing steam, but
Well, and here's the thing,
still
though.
gotta follow the law.
Right, that shouldn't be an issue because once again, this is a country that does not have a state religion, right? But there's a separation between church and state, so that shouldn't be an issue at all. But really, I think what this is rooted in is there's a concern regarding them losing hegemonic control of the United States, not only from a ideological frame of reference, but also from a theological frame of reference as well. So real quick, let me get Hoods Haitian. You was here first and you dropped back out. So I'm gonna let you, of course, you speak your piece and then we give it the snapshot reviews.
Hey, what's going on, bro?
I'm doing quite all right, brother. Zopound, what's the word?
Hey,
Stop passe.
Nabule. Hey, I like listening, from afar, whatnot. Regarding this, when did this term Latinx come about? Because being down here in South Florida, I'm around all of the so-called Latin folks, Cubans, Dominicans, or whatever. They do not like or accept that term.
Yeah, it's an academic. It comes out of academia. And
okay, academia. It's like that.
That's gender neutral. So
okay, all right, that's all right, cool. Now the other thing is that, well, especially I always have to educate Black folks down here in South Florida, and I'm sure I got to educate everybody else
real
too.
Quick, are you in Dade County or Broward County?
Well, I got my businesses in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, but I live in rural Florida.
Okay, I got you.
You know, you got to do that. Land is wealth right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but the thing is, I still don't understand. Well, firstly, not all immigrants are the same.
Right.
Just like not all Black Americans are the same.
Real quick, we use some African Americans here at Lumumba Speaks and be quiet on that.
Okay, not all African Americans are the same. Mm-hmm. Not all immigrants are the same.
Not monolithic.
You know, yeah, exactly. So the immigrants that you see protesting or whatever, you got there's different types of Mexicans. You got the Mexicans that come here legally versus the ones that come here illegally. You got the Haitians that come here legally, then you got the Haitians that come here illegally or whatnot. You know, and the ones that tend to come here legally are in a different financial status than the ones that have to come here illegally. You know, so the mindset is not the same. So the support is also not there or whatnot. Because there's some illegals. I don't support the illegal immigration because my family that came way generations before had to come here legally. You know, wait their turn or whatnot, which is what a lot of folks pretty much are against, the folks that's coming here illegally, skipping the line or whatnot. And like the administration said, you know, once you come here illegally, you already broke the law.
And, you know, so let me say this, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the arguments that, of course, is being made is that, well, this country was created illegally. This country, of course, is rooted in settler colonialism, genocide of Native Americans, and of course the enslavement and dehumanization of African peoples. And so many are arguing, and some of the students I spoke to yesterday, they made the argument that America is in no moral position, right, to make such an argument. But I also stated that there's a difference between a moral position and a legal position.
Exactly. And I would argue that folks are just upset that they got conquered. To me, that's all it is. Okay, whatever you say, but you got conquered. It is what it is. Folks been getting conquered since the beginning of time. You just so happen to come within a time in history where it was your turn to get conquered or whatnot, and you're upset about it. And no, you just got conquered. It is what it is.
Are you stating that people in the Black community should not take issue or umbrage with the long and sordid history of anti-Black racism in America?
Well, even with that, I don't think we hold the Africans that sold us into slavery accountable.
Well, one, I think that is a misnomer, right? And I know we're about to pivot real quick, family, but then we're going to bring it back. So one, but African people are the only people who are blamed for their own Holocaust, right? For example, no one says that Jewish people were responsible for the Jewish Holocaust, even though we know there were Jewish. There were the Judenrat Council that assisted the Nazis and, of course, herding Jewish people into concentration camps and ghettos. Second, no one says white people were selling other white people into slavery when the Vikings were enslaving white people.
But the white people are not complaining about it right now in 2025.
Wait, hold on. The second issue is we have to understand that during that time, we're viewing, and I had a conversation with my colleague about this last week, we're viewing this from a 21st century racialized lens. When the transatlantic slave trade began, there wasn't a concept of race. These people identified based on nationality, ethnicity, or religion, right? So there wasn't a central concept of race, like we're all Black people, right? So as a result, it would be like someone from Canada going to war with someone from America, but they're both white. They don't want to say these are two white people fighting each other. They're going to say this is Germany and France going to war. So I think it's important to also understand that. The second issue is, that African people didn't create the market, right, for the transatlantic slave trade. Third, we also understand that whenever there is any type of oppression, there is perpetrators, collaborators, and victims. Lastly, when we talk about the transatlantic slave trade, it was the Europeans who benefited, right? Financially, they were able to use the selling and capture of African people to fund the Industrial Revolution, right? The Industrial Revolution led to the upgrade in weaponry that allowed Europeans to then circumnavigate the globe and colonize people, non-white people all over the world. So there's a lot there.
There's a lot, but at the same time, we got to just hold all the parties accountable. That's all. Just hold all the parties accountable.
Most scholars argue that the majority of African people that were taken were captured, right? Actually kidnapped. It wasn't not a situation in which individuals were being sold. The other issue is that we also understand that, unfortunately, individuals who were being sold by governments were prisoners of war.
So we're going to use.
But once again, the question is, should we not take umbrage with anti-Black racism?
Well, I mean, in 2025, there's too much self-destruction.
That's not what I asked you. That's not what I asked you.
Because I personally don't believe any boogeyman of white this and white that.
I didn't say anything about white people. I said, should we not take umbrage and issue with anti-Black racism? Because anti-Black racism predates white hegemony in the world. And actually, the progenitors of anti-Black racism were non-Black people of color. So the question is, should we not take umbrage with anti-Black racism? But this has nothing. White people are included in anti-Black racism, but they aren't the progenitors of anti-Black racism.
And what is your definition of anti-Black racism?
Anti-Black racism is racism and discrimination against African people and people of African descent.
By whom?
Non-Black people. We find anti-Black racism going all the way back to antiquity. It predates even the Middle Ages.
Okay. Well, I guess growing up in South Florida, there's a lot of stuff I don't see because a lot of people that look like us run a lot of parts of the city and county. So I didn't grow up seeing any so-called racism, maybe more prejudice than anything. And then as a Haitian, I saw a lot of prejudice from people that look like me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's not what I'm asking you.
Yeah. So I can't.
Even if you haven't seen it, the question still remains: should Black people fight against anti-Black racism? You don't have to see anti-Black racism to answer the question: should we fight against it or not?
Yeah, but if you are a victim of so-called anti-Black racism from other Black people, then what do you call that?
There are Black people who at times are actually practitioners of anti-Black racism as well. Oftentimes they do it for a number. They tend to do it for a number of reasons that are too numerous to state during this, of course, broadcast. But once again, the simple question is: should we fight against anti-Black racism?
Any type of racism should be fought against. So any type of racism. Anti-Black, anti-white, anti-Asian.
No. I'm not asking about I said specifically anti-Black racism. A simple yes or no would suffice.
Yes.
Okay. Snapshot reviews. Could you answer the question? Should Black people fight against anti-Black racism?
Black people should fight anti-Black racism, but I think we need to think about put more energy into what makes us stronger rather than trying to go around educating racists and people from outside of the community. I just don't think we've got time for that. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, so there's a lot of noise in the background.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just in the shopping mall, so I can't really do anything about that. But I'll just be very quick. I think with regards to the topic of the video,
I think African Americans should definitely sit this one out. Don't go down and put yourself out there and stuff like that, because when it's on the other foot, it just doesn't seem to be this whole alliance like the media try to portray out to be. However, anyone who's been rolling over the last 6, 7 years under the banner of FBA needs to be out there in the streets with ICE, because they've spent a lot of time saying how much they want to separate from the wider African diaspora. In some of these chat groups, they've been very xenophobic to other black people, almost sounded like the Ku Klux Klan themselves. So as they've burnt those bridges with other foreign black nations, if they lose America, they'll have nowhere to stand. So if they follow their own logic to conclusion, they need to be out in them streets. And I'm only specifically talking about the people who go under that banner and continue that kind of rhetoric and that kind of division in the African diaspora. They've clearly said they want to delineate, and that's fine, because I don't think we've got time to be begging people to stand with us. They need to be out there in the street.
I hear you. I hear you. Real quick to Black Canadian. So in response to your question, you asked the question, are there any articles or academic books or articles on anti-Black racism in the ancient world? Absolutely. A great article to read on anti-Black racism in the ancient world is The Iberian Roots of American Racist Thought by Dr. James H. Sweet. And as you can see here, I'm going to share my screen. Stop sharing. I got to stop sharing. I'm going to share my screen. And then I will pull this up and you will be able to see it. All right, here we go. So as you can see here, this is actually the article, The Iberian Roots of American Racist Thought by Dr. James H. Sweet. So if you can actually go, you should be able to download this actual article and read it. So it's written years ago, so you may be able to just download it. You may not need to subscribe to an actual academic journal to do so. So with that being said, okay, go right ahead. Okay. Mr. Sandman. Wonderful. So he said he actually, okay, you saved the article on your iPad. Great. So yeah, if you read the article, you will find, of course, a number of examples of anti-Black racism in the ancient world, particularly from an Abrahamic religious frame of reference.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, I had got a phone call, and my signal dropped from the live. Yeah. So what did I miss?
Well, yeah. So the question was, and I was speaking with Hood Haitian, and so we kind of, the question was, should we fight against anti-Black racism? He began to kind of filibuster a little bit, but of course he eventually said yes, we should fight against anti-Black racism. So at first he stated, well, I don't think I've ever seen anti-Black racism. I said, but irrespective if you've seen it or not, is this something that Black people should fight against? Of course, Brother Snapshot Reviews made the argument that he thinks this is something we should sit out, but he says FBA, if they're going to stand on, of course, their principles or whatever principles they have, their position, they should actually be advocating for ICE. So that's the position he took.
Yeah, I mean, I think in any direction that we would take, we would kind of be jumping into it blindly. I feel like it's such a tangled web we've weaved in, not just the United States, but the whole entire world socially, that, one intention might be done. We might make a movement to fight one thing. Our intention is to fight one thing, but the butterfly effect will be the result of something else happening instead. So right. I think that it's just like, for instance, the civil rights activists in the 60s were fighting for desegregation, and they won that battle, but then we lost a lot of the economic prowess that was inside the African American community. So it's like, because we had all of our own businesses, but when we desegregated, all of our wealth started to go into other communities. So it's like, you take the good with the bad. That's why I feel like we're jumping into it blindly, kind of. But so I think the best thing the best way to handle it is just focus on a particular project that you think can fight the racism, as opposed to fighting it directly. So there's several different ways that we can fight it. With by making keeping our kids out of jail, making businesses for our people, taking care of our families, and keeping our people educated about our history and what we want to do moving forward. The ability for us to think critically, and I think that naturally, organically, everything will start to in line in our favor. Because they say luck is the combination of preparation and, you remember that saying? Luck is a combination of preparation and
yeah. So yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I just think that if our community is interested in aligning or supporting, standing in solidarity, I think it needs to be an operational frame of reference, right? Like we saw with, of course, the Black Panther Party and, of course, the Young Lords. My concern would be that if it isn't operational and there isn't a tangible strategic action and goal that one is seeking to, of course, accomplish, it can lead to mission creep. The other issue I have is that what we tend to find our community becomes extremely fired up about issues that aren't necessarily germane to our community or our people, right? Palestine is an example. You can make the argument this is an example, but where's the outcry about what's going on in Togo? Where's the outcry about what's going on in the Congo? Haiti, how the American government has historically and continues to foment civil unrest there, right? What's going on, of course, in South Sudan. So what we tend to find, for the same man, I know you are aware of this, is that we tend to pivot and become very boisterous and supportive of issues that aren't in our community. And we tend to say very little and be inactive about issues that are going on in our community.
Yeah, it seems to me that we have the issue of the media swaying our opinions more so than we actually doing our own research and finding out what's going on ourselves. So I think a lot of people are victim to that, not just African Americans, but if the media makes a big deal of it, then of course we wouldn't jump into it not because we really want to do anything about it, just because we want to be a part of the discussion to have something to talk about. So yeah, I think if they made more of if they talked about it more in the media, which is why it's important for Black people to have our own media networks that focuses on issues like this, like what's going on in Haiti or the Congo, that will cover that information for us.
Right.
And people like you yourself, can broadcast, because you have a platform like that, you can broadcast all of the international news that has to go with the diaspora, to the public, sort of like, CNN is always, pushing the liberal agenda, or Fox News is always pushing the conservative agenda and pushing that information out to everyone. So yeah, I think that people just are unaware of what's going on out there because they don't see it visually, and they're not hearing it talked about that much in the media.
Right. And there was there's a rapper, a Black woman who's a rapper. I think her name is Doechii. She went viral back in March for stating that being a straight man is tantamount to being toxic. It's a red flag, right? This is the same woman who then goes on the BET Awards and starts giving this speech about how, what's going on outside in Los Angeles is rooted in racism and white supremacy. And so it made me think about what Malcolm X said, that these entertainers, comedians, they're puppets, right? You can't, in one vein, state that being heterosexual means you're a red flag and you're toxic, and then go out and try to act like you're an advocate for human rights, right? And so these people are literally, like Malcolm X said, puppets.
Mm-hmm.
They're puppets.
Yeah, they sold.
Yeah. So once again, as a result, we're going to tell you what to say. We're going to tell you how to say it, and we're going to tell you what you're going to stand and advocate for. So these are real issues here, real issues that we have to address as people. Let me read this statement by Snapshot Reviews. He says, on the subject of racism, isn't it interesting that the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, KKK are not out in the streets, but when it's Black Lives Matter protests, they're mobilized at a moment's notice? I think that's a great point. And once again, that's an example of anti-Black racism, right? It's it's omnipresent, it's intransigent in nature, but we find once again, they tend to have an actual anathema for our existence as a people, for Black people's existence as a people, right? So something to, of course, consider. Great point, Snapshot Reviews. Great point.
Yeah, those so-called groups like that, the supremacist groups like that, they're really cowards. You know, if you fight back to them, they'll run. They'll tuck their tail in between their legs and run away.
This is true.
You know, and they know that, you know, we, Black people, you know, we've been dealing with them so long that, and we know the rules, that we just let them do their thing. We do our thing, but they're probably looking at these Mexicans like, oh, this a wild group right here. I don't think we want that smoking.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, a lot of these guys are just middle class, you know what I mean, guys trying to, you know, maybe be a part of a group or something like that. They don't want to lose their jobs and shit. Yeah, that's why they cover their face.
Yeah. And so, and like I said, I understand a lot of this. Once you said, really, not only is it a liberal thing, but it also comes from academia. This concept of we can support all people and have this united front. The reality of the situation is that sounds good, but we're competing with different groups of people for scarce resources. The other issue is it leads to, and I said this before, it leads to mission creep, right? And before you know it, you've expanded the mission. You spread yourself so thin that you're not able to actually accomplish any objective, right? So that's one of the issues I tend to have. And we know that oftentimes our people aren't actually politically mature or well organized. So when they align themselves or coalesce with other groups, those other groups tend to end up organizing us.
Yeah.
Right, because ideologically, we tend to be nebulous in nature. There's a lack of actual ideological education. So these are issues that we find that lead to more problems for us in terms of being able to address the issues in our community. The other issue is that we don't find on a macro level members in the Latinx or Latino community advocating for what? Us when we have issues. And like I said, a great example was what we saw with the former president of the LA City Council, right? Nuri Martinez, who was calling Black children, recorded on a phone conversation, calling Black children Spanish epithets, animals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, that's the issue. Like, we live in a society that's so specialized, whereas though you have to go to college and get your bachelor's degree, your master's degree, sometimes even your doctoral degree in political science to really be in that arena with people, you know. And it doesn't happen all the time, of course. You know, Trump is an example, but when you have such a specialized system or society that we're in, a lot of these people that go into get educated in political sciences, they're in it to make money. They're in it to get rich. So
I think everybody who goes to college, they're trying to make money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they go to college. You know, they want to make money doing what they do. And as a Black people, we don't have an economic resource to provide our politicians. You know, they're not really going to work for us. It's not paying their bills. So I think like
here's the thing. I would argue, we've heard that narrative a lot, but I don't think necessarily you even have to have that if the person is committed, right? So I think of Andrew Jackson, right? When he became mayor of Atlanta, he stated during his acceptance speech to hold me accountable. He said, I promise you, I would never sell you out. And it wasn't a situation in which they had to pay the guy to, make him have him be an advocate for the Black community, right? He simply was Black-minded and went into politics because he wanted to help the community.
Yeah. And there was a time that we could be like that, but it seems like, corporate America is like taking control of Washington, because if you go too far away from the status quo in Washington as a politician, they're going to try to, assassinate your character for the good or for the bad, just for their their special interest groups.
Right.
I think you got to they call it the bipartisan game. I think Biden used to say that a lot. The bipartisan, this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Work across the aisle.
Right.
Scratching my back, I'll scratch yours. So I don't know. I guess you got to play the game, and it's just like a time consuming. It must be like an all day thing. Just constantly staying in contact with all different types of people with political influence all over the country.
Right.
And in Washington, all kinds of special interest people asking, like, I paid for this. I gave you $1 million for your campaign. How come you didn't drop my taxes on this or that and the third? Well, it's a tough thing to navigate against. I think just as us as people, if we're not in the political arena or that's not our specialty, we should just focus on being experts at what we're good at, or what we're trained in.
Yes. And I see Snapshot Reviews. He has a comment here. He says, politics is the business of who gets what resources, right? Dr. King taught us that politics is the business of who gets what, when, where, and how. So we're talking about the dissemination of course, resources. In order for us to be effective players in that game, we have to have a defined agenda, which I would agree.
Yeah, he's right. Yeah.
You got to have a defined agenda. And so that comes back to, okay, you can ally or align yourself with any groups, right? But if you don't have your own agenda, you will end up in a situation where you're getting the short end of the stick, or oftentimes being organized to promote someone else's agenda rather than, of course, your own. And so that's the concern that I tend to have, because as I stated before, what tends to take place, and we find this particularly in academia, is hot button issues take precedent, right? While the issues we're facing as a people, whether they be here in America, we talk about reparations, we talk about what's going on in Haiti, where, consistent Western destabilization and the infusing of course of civil unrest. We talk about even on the continent, not only neocolonialism, but oppressive dictatorships that are being propped up by the West. Togo was an example. What's going on in Sudan, South Sudan, right? These issues individuals are typically unaware of. And when you then make that ask, hey, but can you support us on this? When the person becomes aware that, we have other issues we have to address. So that's the concern that I have in terms of, should we support, of course, the protest, right? And the major issue is, unfortunately, in that community, they have a long and virulent history of anti-Blackness, a long and virulent history of anti-Black racism towards Black people. So then the question is, should we advocate and support people against a common enemy that we know they don't even view us, you could say, on the macro level as human beings? The second issue is, once again, anti-Black racism isn't just about white people, it's about anti-Blackness, right? And we know that the progenitors of anti-Black racism were non-Black people of color.
Yeah, we might not be able to, there might be somewhat of an enemy, quasi, what have you, but just because they don't like us don't mean we can't cut a deal. Like, hey,
correct.
Yeah, we'll help you do this, but you need to give us LA back or something. I don't know. Yeah, we want this half of LA all to us. You need to sell it to us. Pennies on the dollar. We'll get you out of it. Yeah, I don't know, man. Seems like you can flip it, you know. They've been taking advantage of us for the longest. I was just saying that the other day. I'm like,
yeah,
ain't these Mexicans the same ones, you know, or the people, you know, in South America, Central America, wherever you, with all these, you know, cocaine plantations that was making billions of dollars off of crack cocaine in the black community, you know, for decades, you know. And have they, you know, returned any of that money back to us?
right, right. So yeah, that's a good point. So family, once again, tap in, be part of the conversation. If you're watching, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and hit the notification bell. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Well, you're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black in conjunction with Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, in the home of African-centered news and information. The link is in the description, family. The link is in the chat. We're having a hot button, of course, conversation regarding the Latinx community protests in LA that have spread nationwide against ICE. And then, of course, the question is, should the Black community support that of course, protest? So tap in, family. As you know, some of the ground rules here at Lumumba Speaks is, of course, diversity of thought is welcome. So you can tap in and be part of the conversation, irrespective of you're on the left or you're right down the middle, or just someone who's Black-minded. Number two, once again, we want to, of course, facts over feelings, right? You cannot attack the person, but you can attack the argument that someone makes. And number three, no racial epithets, no epithets of any kind. This is a space of Black empowerment. We believe in the 3 N's of Black power: self-respect, self-defense, and of course, self-determination. And then last but not least, during our conversation, you cannot make a claim that is, of course, patently false. For example, you may believe that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player ever, but if you were to claim he's the greatest basketball player ever because Michael Jordan only won 2 championships, that would be a patently false statement, and I will have to tap in and, of course, correct you. So with that being said, family, once again, the link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Tap in, be part of the conversation. You're watching, of course, LumumbaSpeaks.com and, of course, Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, in the home of African-centered news and information. Let me get to this comment by Snapshot Reviews. He says, if African Americans get involved, it would do more harm than good because it's supporting criminals' techniques. So from a technical standpoint, you're saying you're advocating for, of course, criminals, which that's a conversation within itself, because Trump just commuted the sentence of Larry Hoover, who, of course, was a crime lord in Chicago. So interesting point there. People whose families brought them over as children, I would have sympathy for, because they would not have the agency at 5 years old to decide where their parents moved them to. That is very true. And someone else brought that up, that, you know, as a child, you don't have, you know, a say so. You know, you go wherever your parents take you. So great point there as well. And I think that's when I think the Obama administration, they passed something called the DREAM Act, where so people who did come illegally, particularly with children, there was a process they would have to go through to gain citizenship. So great point there. I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, we keep calling it illegal what they did, but a person is innocent until proven guilty, and that's where the due process comes in. So, like we were talking about before, you can't just say, "Hey, you look like a Hispanic, so I gotta deport you."
Yes, and we do know that some of what's taking place, that they've actually deported people who were here legally, and part of it was due to lack of due process, right? So I'm glad we're having this conversation, because there were situations in which individuals were here in the country legally, they were arrested by ICE and then deported without a hearing, and then they later find out, the individual, it actually is here legally. So you said Obama didn't provide a path to citizenship for them. So was it the Biden administration? Because I think the DREAM Act is what I'm referring to. So the DREAM Act was the Dreamers. I'm trying to think, what was the acronym for DREAM Act? Yes, was Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors Act, known as DREAM Act. So, yeah, I think.
there's immigration lawyers all over the country. There's no excuse for, you know, a migrant not to be able to find one of them, you know, and talk to them about a payment plan that the immigration lawyer can represent them in the court of law so they can expedite the immigration process. But if they neglecting that, or if they don't have the economic funds to pay for that, then I guess that's an economic.
Well, yeah. So I'm seeing it here. In 2012, Barack Obama announced that his administration would stop deporting illegal immigrants who match certain criteria included in the proposed DREAM Act. On August 15th, 2012, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services began accepting applications under Obama's administration's new Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, known as DACA. So it wasn't DREAM Act, it was DACA. Appreciate that snapshot. Thousands applied for the new program because DACA was designed in large measure to address the immigration status of the same people as the DREAM Act. The two programs are often debated together. However, in September 2017, the Trump administration rescinded the program while pushing Congress to enact a replacement to the legislation prior to the elimination of DACA protections. So that's where we're at now. So it was during the Obama administration, his second, of course, administration, where they created DACA to provide a path to citizenship for individuals who had came illegally under certain particular stipulations.
Yeah, and I believe there's also like an international treaty or agreement that says that if you're seeking asylum, you can come to another country without, you know, going through a port of entry if you're running to save your life. And that's where the due process comes in as well. It's like, how can you prove that these people were running from the cartels in Mexico? Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, if they are running from the cartels in Mexico, then you're part of the problem, because the Mexican cartel is only successful because they sell the majority of their product to American products. So we're feeding the supposed, you know, animal that's attacking these people in South America and Central America.
Right, and so here's another issue, and that snapshot reviews brought up about rounding up gangbangers. One of the things Trump has spoken to and stated that he wants to do is, if you are someone who has been convicted of a violent crime, he's looking to deport you, even if you're an American citizen. Yeah, that's that if you are an American citizen, if you are have been convicted of a violent crime, he wants to deport even American citizens who are convicted of violent crimes.
And where are they going to deport them to? What country would want them?
Yeah, they have an agreement with is it El Salvador? And then I think they were also looking at deporting people to a North African country as well.
Oh.
Yes, seriously.
That's bugged out. He wilding out.
So from that standpoint, you can see why people are saying, hey, we need to be up in arms about what he's doing, because he's now, I mean, you can't deport someone who's an American citizen. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah. You wonder if he's just trying to scare people, but you know what I mean? That's it. That should be against the law, man. I mean, what the hell? I don't know.
But what we do know is that, you know, he is seeking to skirt the law, right? So I can read this article here, and I can actually share the article so you all can see it as well. So but these are some issues, real issues that we're looking in the face of the people. President Trump says that the administration is actively exploring a proposal to detain U.S. citizens and send them to prisons in El Salvador. Speaking Monday, minutes before a press briefing alongside El Salvador's president, and this was, of course, April 16th of this year. El Salvador is already holding hundreds of people in maximum security prisons. They are flown from the U.S. in recent weeks after being detained for allegedly lacking legal status or having gang affiliations. Of course, critics say many of those individuals were deported with limited or no due process, which, of course, is an issue. Responding to Trump on Monday, let's go here. Proposal. So let's see. The proposal has drawn condemnation from some legal scholars who said it would represent an unprecedented encroachment on the civil liberties of U.S. citizens. It is obviously unconstitutional. obviously illegal. There's no authority in any U.S. law to deport U.S. citizens and certainly not to imprison them in a foreign country, said David Beer of the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank based in Washington, D.C. The problem, of course, is Trump already has illegally deported hundreds of people, but not just by just not giving the courts an opportunity to stop him. Beer added, I think that's the real fear now that he's going to try to invade judicial review of deportations of U.S. citizens. Not everyone is voicing opposition to Trump's concept of detaining U.S. citizens and sending them overseas. The NPR contacted 3 prominent conservative legal scholars, all declined to comment. We also contacted 3 conservative legal think tanks. 1 declined to comment, 2 others didn't respond. But so we see that this is an issue, that this is an individual who literally is seeking by all via what we're reading in precedent to what skirt the law. He was asked in an interview, isn't it your job to follow the Constitution? His response was, I don't know, but I know I have good lawyers.
Well, I tell you what, if we could call his bluff, right? if he's going to take all violent criminals, right, that are committed a violent crime, supposedly, or is what they say, or they were accused of committing a violent crime.
Well, no, convicted of committing a violent crime, then take all of the police officers that kill people in the line of duty. Well, we know that's not going to happen. They've even stated, members of his entourage have even stated that they're looking to actually pardon George Floyd's killer. So
yeah, or
we know
George Sherman, Officer Sherman. Yeah, send him to El Salvador first, and then
not going to happen.
Then we'll send the black guy.
Yeah. So these are issues to consider, and from this perspective, I can see why Black people would say, hey, we're going to be part of this protest. We need to advocate because what they're doing is just illegal. It's illegal. Right. And like I said, we see this isn't talk. He's already illegally deported people. They've already literally deported people who were U.S. citizens who were here illegally. And the court said, hey, you got to bring this person back. And then his administration said, well, no, we're not going to. Yeah. Yeah. So this is what we're dealing with here. And so I can understand why people would say, hey, this is an issue we need to address because this man is actually acting in contravention of the law.
Yeah, he's acting in a way that sounds like he doesn't have much time, and he knows he doesn't have much time to live. So he's going all out. I wonder if he has like some type of terminal disease.
Well, no, I think the issue is he's simply saying, I'm going to do everything that I want to do, and you're not going to stop me, and you're going to have to try to stop me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just seemed like ever since that attempted assassination, he's been going overboard.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So just something to consider. Snapshot Review says the best way for African Americans to help if they want would be to lobby media groups so that they stop deliberately conflating immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. They do that on purpose. This is very true. And here's the thing. There are Black African American groups that already do that. But they don't, we're talking about anti-Black racism here. They don't give a damn about our positions or perspective on things. Right? When the Hurricane Katrina took place and it flooded New Orleans in 2005, which is 20 years ago, we probably should do a show on the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. And what ended up taking place was they said, hey, this is an issue. This is problematic. You're calling African Americans refugees. So what? So, I just think it's important that we know that a lot of these things are already taking place, but they don't care because we aren't even considered human beings, let alone citizens in this country. So just something to consider once again. Final thoughts, family, before we of course check out this morning, afternoon regarding it'd be morning where, depending on where you're at, afternoon depending on where you are in the African world. So the final thoughts, of course, snapshot, and then final thoughts, Mr. Sandman, and then we're going to call it a day. All right. Well, family, appreciate everyone for tapping in. Until next time, you know what to do. Don't always bet on Black. Mr. Sandman.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, I didn't know I was muted. I was just going to say that, just my initial response to the whole situation is I thought that it could be done a little bit more subtly, a little bit more cleanly, but it seems as though that he wants to take radical means to curb the problem. If it is a problem, then maybe it is a problem. What have you? Or the American voter sees it as a problem. Economically, I don't know what it is, but whatever the case may be, if it is illegal and there's a lot of illegal stuff going on in between the border, then there should have been a better way to handle it, in my opinion. But now that we're already in this mess, and I think we're at the point of no return. I think the best bet is to allow it to die down and then come back to the negotiating table at a later date. Because I don't think, right now is real emotional.
Well, brother, I appreciate you tapping in. Till next time, family, y'all know what to do. Always bet on Black. Peace.